Kia ora and welcome to Under the Hood. Today I have got with me Mr. Matt Two Castles Clark. How are you doing, sir?
Really good, thanks, Keeegs. Thanks for having me on. Always happy to chat all things Splinterlands.
Nice. Yeah, I've been looking forward to getting you on. And I've also got Mr. Bjangles. How are you, sir?
Hello, gentlemen. Always a pleasure hanging out. And when I got the invite for coming on with, um, we were just teasing each other about not getting along. But one of the guys that I have tremendous respect for in the community, MattClarke, talking DAO stuff. Yeah, had to make it happen. So pleasure to be here.
Yeah, nice. Well, and so one of the reasons we got Matt in, and I think it's important to have him early, is he is the director or like chairman of the foundation. And so I just want to explore a bit more is like, what is the foundation? How does that relate to the DAO? And yeah, Bjangles is also a member of this foundation. So yeah, can you give us a little something, man.
Yeah, I'm happy to, mate. So the the DAO is a distributed autonomous organization, which means it's basically a club, online decentralized club, and you buy, I guess, membership points in SPS, and then you stake those, and you're now a bigger club member. The problem that arises is that DAO, that club, wants to interact with legacy systems. We might want to say run an advertising program, say take out a Super Bowl ad or something, and it's difficult to talk to an entity, a business, a corporation, and say, hey, let's do this thing, and they say, who are we actually? What organization am I speaking with? So I'm the director of the DAO Foundation, which is the legal entity that we've incorporated. So that's incorporated in Panama, and that is the way that the DAO talks to the legacy, the old school, the regular businesses, for whatever needs to be done. So if something needs to be signed, that'll be sent around either digitally or physically to the foundation members, and adding and removing foundation members. So just the way you would look at any other corporation, right? So we're incorporated as a not-for-profit foundation. So there's no bank accounts attached, but we are a legal entity, right? So I don't have to worry that the ATO is going to come and kick in my door. I mean, they might change the rules and do that. But there's no bank accounts. It doesn't hold or own any non-crypto assets. And I and foundation members, we're not actually capable of sitting together, the three of us, and saying, we're going to now spend $1 million worth of crypto on X or Y or Z. The only people who can do that is the treasurers, and the treasurers will only do that after a full proposal vote. Through the proposal system. So I'm the director of that foundation, but the chairman of the DAO.
Okay, yes.
And the irony is that we're moving away from that, but we still need to interact with that world, right? So we're trying to build a better world, but we also need to branch back to the old. So there's an irony there, but there's also an irony in that we're building a trustless environment, and yet we're the ones that are trusted by the individuals to operate in that trustless environment. So we're a organization that's completely autonomous, but we're also running it, but kind of not. We're doing everything for the first time, and it's a great bunch of people that we're doing it with.
Yeah, it's a lot of figuring out and learning. I imagine, ideally in the future, some of these entities, they'll be up to the scratch enough where we can just do it via smart contracts. But, the legacy system isn't quite there yet. Yeah, it's interesting. So you mentioned the treasurers as well. So that's another group of people, and they're responsible for signing transactions on the DAO's behalf, essentially, right?
That's right. There's a lot of overlap. The foundation members are also treasurers, but the foundation is just the legal side of it, the legacy legal side of it, and the treasurers are the crypto side of it. Actually, where the rubber hits the road and things actually get signed. So we do things as multi-sig, and we need a certain number of signatures. We need six signatures to actually get anything through in the multi-sig wallets, which is good. If anyone's compromised or anything like that, we can. There was a communication breakdown a while ago where I wasn't sure that AsiaCon was legitimately AsiaCon. So we kind of, oh, hang on, everybody, and we spread the word and said, let's not push anything through. Let's all just, it's time for caution until we can get him on video and interact and make sure that he's actually the right guy. And it just turned out to be a misunderstanding, but it's really good to see that type of thing is in place, where all of the treasurers are alert to the possibility that somebody's been hacked or what have you. And I said from the start with when we started the whole treasurers project and when we started the multi-sig stuff, I said, look, the big concern that we have is collusion. So don't ever DM me anything that you think might be funny and say, hey, what we should do is rip off basically said, I'm like the TSA when you're talking about bombs, right?
Yeah.
I don't have a sense of humor about collusion. If anyone was to DM me and say, hey, let's do, and then try to pass it off as a joke, that's an attempt, right? And you don't get a free attempt. So I would immediately publicize that and let it be known. No, we're not going down that track. I have zero sense of humor about the concept of collusion. So we're spread out all over the world. There is trust. We have alternate ways to contact each other. And I think it would be very, very difficult for somebody to hit enough treasurers simultaneously without causing any interruption or disturbance in order to actually take anything meaningful out of the DAO, which is good because the DAO holds a lot of tokens and stables that don't have the benefit of time locks like things do on Hive. So I've been, and I'm assuming we might circle back to this, but I went to Soulkeep. I think might not be going so well. I didn't have as much of an interest in it as I thought I would. So I got a heap of packs there and quite a lot of cards. So I'm thinking, well, I'm going to burn those for Cinder now since that's the possibility and land cards are coming. And I've been looking, what am I going to do with these Soulkeep assets? Didn't really want to sell them. So I plan on burning those for Cinder, but I thought, hang on, they're locked because I've already locked these cards all for 3 days just as a security measure. I've already started unlocking them, so that'll complete tomorrow or something like that. And then when I'm ready to burn them for Cinder, I will. But a lot of other tokens that they just don't have that time lock, right? And I think the time locks are incredible. When people are talking about, we should move the game to a different chain, like, no, the ecosystem has not yet adopted time locks, and I think that's when we really kick up. It's when we really kick off, and I think we're years ahead of the rest of the ecosystem for that. Big fan.
Yeah, I think the time locks, they're just so useful, right? They and then we've also now got the supporting system from Bamlocks with the notification if anybody unlocks your stuff. In an environment where you're responsible for your assets, it helps to have those kind of tools in place. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, absolutely. And I saw the little red indicators come up as I was unlocking my Soulkeep cards, the notifier bot on Discord. I'm like, good, the system works. Love to see all these checks. Yeah,
I think it's really good. And even the fact that we have the 3-day lock on land as well, which is handy, just in case. For me, I'm less concerned because most of my valuable cards are sitting away on land. But yeah, I should probably set up some locks a bit more, trying to start better management with just delegations and stuff instead. Don't have to shuffle them around. So can you guys tell me a bit more about the process of how you guys became involved with this foundation? Maybe Bjangles, you can run us off on that.
Yeah, sure. So, I want to say 15 months ago-ish. I think conversations first started up and, we recognized, shout out to Clay. That guy knows the ins and outs of DAOs and crypto and blockchain. He's super knowledgeable and, I don't think he gets nearly enough credit for, the skill set, the very unique and wide-reaching skill set that he brings to the table. But, he cleverly started this conversation and, how do we protect the DAO and how do we protect the ecosystem? And one of the big talking points that came out of that was this foundation. And I think my timeline, correct me if I'm wrong, MC, but I think my timeline is right about 15 months ago, 12 months ago, something like that. We've been working on this thing, and it was a long, arduous process of getting members officially on board, and the official founding of the foundation was a long process. But as far as the initial nominations, I think it was just a show of hands, and we went to a vote. There was polls in Peak Monsters and on Splinterlands. I think it was actually Hive stake weighted voting. if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, good question.
I think from memory it was like it's on peak DA. I think it's still SPS stake weighted polling is
It
what we
might
had.
be.
Yeah. Because like Hive just seems pretty, not everybody in Splinterlands is on Hive, although they should be. Well, they are on it, but they don't use it really.
Yeah, there's still a disconnect there. But
Yeah.
whether it was SPS or Hive, there was a poll that was associated with said nominees, and I think it was Matt, it was Dave, it was myself, and I think that was the gamut. I don't think there was anybody else that really put up their hand and said I'd like to be involved. Um, we're in the process of separating church and state, for lack of a better word, getting Dave off of the foundation and moving a fourth person into that position. Dwayne, Infidel 1258. I think he's super credible. Like MattClarke, he's pretty much fully doxed. We know where in the world he is. He's very trustworthy. He's yeah. I think, man, we shout out the community in a whole slew of conversations and topics and kind of focal points. And I think this is another very worthwhile shout out to this community that we've gathered and built over the years. And I mean, the number of guys that I have absolute trust for that are going to serve this community and this company and this game and our fellow community members, in an honorable fashion, I think far outweighs the number of scummy folks that we see. We've just built such an incredible community. So that's not what this is about. But yeah, that was the process. It was just show of hands, and then there was an associated vote, and yeah.
Yeah. Matt, do you anything you want to add?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it is up for public vote. If somebody wanted to throw up a proposal and say I'd make a better chairman than Matt, that's go for it. And I certainly wouldn't want the role if the community wanted somebody else in there. But it was a very non-contentious sort of, people said, okay, yeah, we know these guys, we trust these guys, we've seen their faces. And look, I've said this before, there are heavier hitters in the game. There are guys whose investment far surpasses mine, and both in fiat and in crypto terms. But they're not suitable for the role because they're just a screen name, right? There's no face, there's no location, and we need that, right? I want our whales to be anonymous. I want them to be some guy out there and nobody really knows, and he's looking after all his security and the like, and he's not going to get knocked over the head and have his fingernails pulled out for keys and I'm glad. That's a good thing, but it does mean that there are people who are more knowledgeable about crypto in general, far better at the game, but because they're not publicly outed doxed figures, then it's guys like us who are able to put our hand up and say, yes, you know who I am, where I am, you've seen my face, and so we're the ones who tend to get trusted with these kind of roles, and that's what it is, right? We're facing particularly myself, we're the ones that the DAO uses to represent the DAO. Like we're the DAO's representatives in the real world. If CBS rang up Clay and said, "Oh, who's gonna speak on behalf of the DAO?" Well, I'd probably hope it would be him actually, but it'd be reasonable for him to say, "Well, here, have a talk to this Matt Clarke fella." So, but yeah, very non-contentious. There was no bad blood in that process. I think the people who recognised the necessity of it said that we'd make good contenders, and I'm very humbled to have that title bestowed.
Nice. And so are you guys there on like an ongoing kind of basis until there is a proposal to change it, or is it a time-based thing?
Good question.
To be
I don't think
determined?
it was time. I don't think it was time limited. I don't remember hearing a time limit on it at any point.
I think it's the former. I think it's until somebody else comes in and there's a vote. I think it's a very democratic process, which is great. I think we did put in as part of the team that we engaged to help us legally found the foundation is based in Central America, and I think part of their process requires that there's checks and balances in terms of, God forbid Matt gets hit by a bus, what happens? So there are bits and pieces there to help protect, if there is a worst case scenario. Obviously that would that would absolutely make finding a replacement imperative. But yes, so I think it is one of those instances where somebody would need to come in and put their name in the hat and say, hey, I could do a better job, or I've got XYZ ideas for the foundation, and vote me in, sort of thing.
And I would absolutely welcome that. If anybody is in that position, put your hand up, come on Splinterlands 101, have that conversation, have that chat. I want the best guy in the seat. I don't care if it's me or not. I just want the best guy in the role.
Well, Matt, that would mean you you'd be on the journey to 100,000 battles, right?
Yeah, have to go back to wild.
Get back in there. Well, what did you end up? Was it 50,000 in the end?
Yeah, 50,000 wild battles. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, and not quite a 50% win rate. I remember crunching the numbers and leading up to it. I thought I just need 150 wins out of the next 76 battles, and I can hit that 50-50.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, hey, at least it gives you a good reason to go to 60 when you get some more time.
That's the spirit. That's the spirit.
Yeah. How is the chairman's bounties going?
Good. Yeah, really good. The engagement was a little bit slow at first, but it's definitely been picking up as more people are, and a few guys have said they've got post-it notes now, sort of around the screen, so that they know if I come up against Mondroid, I need to take him out with this, or if I come up with the different win conditions. And it's been difficult. There's been a few edge cases where you say, oh, does this really count as a win according to the? But that just helps me tidy up the definitions of the bounties. And there's a lot of guys claiming over and over again. There's a guy who win a 50,000 SPS bounty, and then a week later he'll be like, there's actually a 100,000 SPS bounty I've just won, so I'll bump him up to that. And then
Professional bounty hunter, huh?
Exactly. And then a week later you say, I've just won another 100,000. I'm like, well, it's one per, because it's very difficult for me to track. I've got a range of all these delegations, and I just want to, when it hits 50 days, or generally check after a couple of months, and just undelegate. So I don't really want to run multiples and all of that. So I just there's a few 50,001 SPS delegations where I've, it goes halfway through, and then I need to restart his 50 days again. But it's great to see the people are engaging with it. I think, I've had a bit of feedback from guys saying it's generally people who are too high up the food chain for them to have a crack at. They're saying, if it's for the benefit of newcomers, then it should be more, bronze and silver. And I think that yes and no. There are some. The big concern I have, and I haven't really elucidated this before, but my biggest concern is that people will just multi-account, that a bounty target will just multi-account and then just beat himself according to, just keep trying to, submitting battles at the same time and trying to match up with his ult, and then just claim it as a, and so I've really been putting bounties on people I trust not to do that. And so those people are generally guys who've been in the game a lot longer, names that I know from around, we've spoken in the past, guys that I know are here for the long-term benefit of the game, rather than just picking random names that are in maybe silver or lower in gold. I'm going to want to get guys that I know who are very unlikely to do that, because, I don't mind parting with the SPS, but you don't want people gamifying it. You don't want people winning with ults. You want it to be a fair competition, because then now I'm out of SPS and there's genuine solid players that are missing out just because they wouldn't game the system. So putting bounties on people I trust. So ironically, if I have put a bounty on you, please don't be offended. It's not that I want you beaten. It's actually that I trust you not to multi-account. So hopefully that's, and it's good because I'll tag people of, put a bounty on in the actual bounty, and they'll often come back and reply and say, can I bring it on? Come at me, boys. It's been a really good fun experiment. I'd love to see down the road. A few people have suggested ways it could be incorporated into the game proper. If you hit submit for a battle, and then BJ, you've matched up against Bjangles. Here are the different win conditions of different bounties that have been taken out on him at the moment. And if you can do any of these, you're going to get and they could be crowdfunded, where people have said, I'm going to put this up for anyone who can take out Bjangles in this specific way. And of course, then he's going to be defending against that, assuming that that's coming. So it's kind of bringing that broader community piece into the gameplay, and not making it just so much each match is its own neat, discrete package. Each match is part of a broader conversation between that individual and the broader community, because he knows there's a really good chance the guy he's up against is going to want to claim 1 or 2 or 3 of these bounties. So, but that's down the track. This is just a proof of concept. And it's really just come about because I retired from Wild at 50,000 matches, and I thought, well, I've got all this SPS here. I generally don't vote on retired. I generally don't vote on proposals anyway. So my SPS is just kind of sitting there.
Well, you can still vote even if it's delegated out.
I know, yeah, that is the case. Yeah, you're only delegating out the extra match rewards. But I just kind of looking at it and thinking it's kind of a waste there. I really want to just gamify this a little bit further. So, and I've come up with various different ideas over the years. But I think when you're the chairman, you get to occasionally just call in some favors. And Royal Eagle was kind enough to set up the channel for me, and that's about it, right? That's everything else has been just something I've thought through and executed. I'm really enjoying it. I'm just going to continue doing it until it's not fun anymore, and I think that'll be a while.
It's absolutely a badge of honor. If you get targeted by a bounty, like, not only is that meaning that you're on MattClarke's radar, but all of a sudden, you've got a target on your back. It's fun, man. I love that has picked up steam. I think just about every day I see that there's engagement in the channel. There's folks suggesting new bounties, and I saw Mondroid got tagged for a bounty that was something along the lines of beat Mondroid without affliction in your lineup or something.
That's right.
Mondroid, of course, Mondroid had the clever anti approach is, well, I'm just going to bring a bunch of heal. Yeah. Suck on that.
It's just got all the tank healers on speed dial. You guys are my people. I'm gonna. All the rest are like, why are you never picking me for? It has been great. I'm loving it. To be honest. And look, we've got it set now. You come in, you start the campaign, right? Then you're in Frontier for a while, and that's really good now. That's really nicely developed. Then you switch to Modern, right? And then there's just climbing in Modern. Maybe you've been here a couple of years and you decide to start embracing Wild, some of your older cards that you love, you don't want to stop playing with. But I think that whole progressing through Modern, I like the idea that if you're getting rewarded for coming into Discord and engaging with the community and discovering these things, then that's an extra step in the progression. You start at campaign, then Frontier, then Modern, claim a few bounties to really bolster your efforts, your returns, your rewards in Modern, and then that can be, whether you plan to stay in Modern for a long time, that can be a way to build an account from very, very small reasonably quickly if you have the talent to do it, if you've got the chops to actually win the battles.
Yeah, I'm all for supporting, those players being able to play and grind. Not everybody has to be able to buy in. If they want to grind and win their way through, go for it.
Absolutely, that motivates me. Don't pull the ladder up behind you, right?
Yeah,
I got a heap of. We're talking about wood earlier in the Discord chat, talking about wood. I got a heap of wood in the liquidity pool. I'm coming up on 6%. I'm making about 1 million wood a week with my land, and that's fantastic. But I think that's all well and good for me to go, yay, hooray, look at me, I'm getting it. But I remember being small in the game. I remember not having a lot before SPS rolled out and before land. I still was quite heavily in Hive. I wasn't that invested in Splinterlands, and I remember. And I think if the guys at the top who are sitting pretty and just going, I'm just going to log in and collect my rewards. I don't even battle anymore. I'm just sitting here in my bathrobe, not just enjoying retirement. That's all well and good, but we can't be pulling the ladder up behind ourselves. We need to constantly be looking down and saying, right, how can I help the talented guys who are genuine human individuals that have the skills? How can I help them to come up and join us? Because that's what we want, is a big middle class, right? Big middle class.
Well, that's why I'm quite against the idea of kind of removing the SPS rentals. I think, that's a way that makes it accessible for people to come in and play. That for me, that's almost, founding some of that constitution kind of ideas, what are some of the priorities as the DAO? And I think the DAO, we should be always supporting and encouraging as much as we can pathways that help enable people to get in. Not everybody's going, oh yeah, I found this game, I like it, and I'm just going to drop $5,000 on a set. We need the way people get in, get their toes wet, figure out a bit more, fall in love with it a bit more. I'm hoping that we can do some stuff with some cool ghost card tournaments for that as well. But I think, we just need an accessible pathway in. Leagues is another prime one that can help with that as well. I think, having that safe area that you can play, that, that the big kids aren't going to come in here and stomp on you. It's nice to be able to play with similar sized kids.
Yeah, yeah. So with the constitution, you've mentioned that a few times, wanting to establish a formal constitution. I've got some misgivings, more in I guess with the way I currently perceive it to be. Right. So if I look at the US Constitution, I'm not going to tell Bjangles about the US Constitution, but for us colonials, we could probably just riff on it for a bit. But as best I understand, the Constitution is a founding document for the US to say, this is where we're coming from. This is what we stand for. This is the limits of what government can do. Right. So it's to say the Constitution is a power, is an authority, but the government is also an authority, and the Constitution is there to limit the authority of the government. Saying there's things that you can't take away from people. You can't take away their right to free speech, freedom of search and seizure, right to bear arms, right to vote, speedy trial. All of that stuff is constitutional rights that the government shouldn't theoretically be able to impinge upon. And I think if that's what we're thinking of in regards to the DAO, I think the problem comes when, just like we've seen with the US, when somebody claims that a particular proposal violates Article 3 of the DAO's constitution, then we've got there's some friction there, right? So you put up a proposal and say, I want to do this, and this I think would be good for the game. And then somebody else comes through and says, well, Article 3 of our constitution says this, and I believe that your proposal violates Article 3 of the Constitution. And I think the idea of a constitution is fine, but in that specific scenario, we might all be coming at it with different ideas about what happens then. So some people might be thinking, oh, well, if somebody claims that a proposal violates the Constitution, we'll just get the chairman to decide whether it does or not. I don't want that power. But that's what some people might be thinking, right?
Yeah.
Other people might be thinking, oh, look, if it violates the Constitution, then Clay won't list it. He won't make it an official proposal. He'll say, no, this doesn't. Or first you have to have a proposal to change the terms of the Constitution, or we have a proposal. Does this proposal violate Article 3 of the Constitution? Right, because we need to first discern that it doesn't violate the Constitution before we can start voting on it. So you get what I'm saying? When we've got two authorities, there's friction, there's points of friction between them. In the US, it's judges interpreting the Constitution in case law and the like. And so it's more tiers and layers, but there's friction between those tiers and layers. And I get why people would get there's a sense of safety here, because here's our Constitution, and here's what we believe in. But I think the problem is if we lock in, here's what the DAO is, and that document has teeth, right? That Constitution has teeth for whatever reason, in whatever regard. Then when somebody's looking at buying SPS, because of the governance power that it gives them, there are things that SPS can't do, which are elucidated in the Constitution. So what we could do is actually undermine the value proposition of SPS. Because somebody's going to be, looking at it and then saying, okay, I want to buy this. Say, for example, somebody's running for mayor of a city in the US. And he's saying, okay, well, I want the power that comes with this role, but I'm not going to be able to ban guns. I'm not going to be able to hold people without trial because that violates the Constitution. So that actually undermines the value proposition of running for mayor, right? And that's what I worry about is that A, there's friction, B, lots of different people have different mental ideas about how this would actually play out in reality, and C, what does that do to the value of SPS if there are things that you're never going to be able to vote on with your SPS? That's I guess the summary of, and I might be completely misunderstanding where you want to go with the Constitution, but I've been giving it a lot of thought, and I could see a lot of pitfalls if it does have teeth. Now I can see you're dying to talk. I'm going to let you. It's all you.
Yeah. Well, so I guess it doesn't necessarily have to be a constitution. But I guess the main thing I'm looking for is let's get some kind of documentation that can guide us. It doesn't have to be solid in points. It can be vague. I guess that's up for the community to try come together and figure out, where in these scales of, how vague, how much, what scope do we want? Do we want it to be? There's lots of examples of those kind of just, I guess, foundational kind of documents that, I guess give you clarity, I guess, on kind of what we're here to do. And yes, I agree. Sometimes it might limit your SPS because of that. But I could also argue the other way as well, is if you know that, okay, the DAO is going to keep, make sure that Splinterlands runs forever, make sure that we're growing tournament pools, make sure that our developers are, or whatever, all these different things we can put in there. This goes, actually, yeah, I like what these guys are up to, and I know that within most of the time we're going to go kind of follow this course that I kind of resonate with. And yeah, and like you said, sometimes, like you said, might come up as, hey, this is a conflict in the Constitution. If it's loose, we might have it go, okay, if your proposal has something that is conflicting, acknowledge it and explain why that you think it should be okay that we can still go ahead with it. So yeah, we could have that really solid, like, this is exactly how it goes, or we can have a bit more of a loose. But I think just having people kind of on a similar page, on a similar course, it'll help with some of the conversations, I think. But yeah, so I'm not necessarily saying it has to be hard and fast. And yeah, I'm just keen to get an idea of, what does the community want? Do they want something at all? And yeah, what kind of stuff could we include? It looks like Bjangles has got a little something.
Well, yeah, I mean, as somebody who has, I've gone through the proposal process, and I'm going to call Tofu out. One of the last proposal that we tried to put out there was with respect to changing a card. The request was to adjust stats and abilities. I think mana cost was a piece on there too, and I had a lot of conversation with Tofu about that particular proposal. It was with regards to Nidhogger, and the downvote was not necessarily because he disagreed. The downvote was more as a result of, this is not the DAO's space. So, and then there's conflicting philosophy. You talk to Yaba, and he came out and pretty much verbatim said, "I love this proposal. This is what I want to see from the game." So I think, maybe it's semantics. Maybe it's not a constitution, but I think the guidelines, as agreed upon and defined by the community, this is where the DAO has jurisdiction. This is where we should be focusing our proposals. Is this something that we should even be dipping our toes into as a DAO and as a system of governance? That sort of stuff, I think, is incredibly valuable. And I don't know, maybe there still would be, points of friction, but it's not like you would have to put in proposals to override the guidelines, sort of thing. So I think that, just to funnel and channel, where should we be putting our efforts in as a DAO to support the game, to support the ecosystem, to support the company? There's very different tracks and lanes in which, you go through the course of history from our DAO proposals, and there's everything from, there was the Rift Watchers pre-sale snafu. I think that's what kicked us off. That was a really hot proposal right out of the gate. And then we've seen stuff like Modern and Wild. I would argue that that's probably not, historically, it's kind of surprising looking back and seeing that proposal actually went through, because there's a lot of folks that felt like that's actually putting the DAO's fingerprints on gameplay. However, I would also argue that was arguably one of the most valuable proposals that we have ever passed as a community. So yeah, I think just setting up those guardrails in terms of, and maybe it's a series of subsections. If you're going to propose around gameplay, this is the sphere in which you should be trying to operate. So I think in terms of trying to guide the community and help focus where the DAO should be, or where is our jurisdiction able to reach into, I think you'd be hard pressed to find somebody that would say that is not a valuable effort of time and documentation.
Yeah, no, that's I agree. I think if we have a set of guiding principles, something that says here's what the DAO is here to do, right? Drive value to the SPS token, look after the long-term viability of Splinterlands, the game. I'd like to see something along the lines of economic freedom for everyone who has an internet connection. That would be a thing. Freedom from I guess, limitation and surveillance and all of that stuff, even as much security as possible. I know that freedom and security are often neck and neck. And again, this is the start of a long conversation, but that's my main misgiving with the Constitution is as long as the power is still with the SPS staker to vote yes or no on any proposal that comes up. I would hate to see there's something nailed on the wall, and if somebody posts a proposal and somebody else says that violates that Constitution, that's going to then lead to more friction and more stepping back. I would be totally okay with a scenario where somebody says, hey, I think that what your proposal is not in line with our founding documents, and make the argument, but not that would ever be a reason for that proposal to be pulled. Just it would be a reason for people to be convinced and swayed by those arguments and to vote no. So I think we're all largely on the same page, but I would like to see it more what is the DAO's goals long term, and let the proposal system manage strategy towards those goals. What path are we going to take is all about the proposal system, but like you say, we need a clear direction and goal. More value to SPS, more stability for Splinterlands, and like I say, I'd like to see economic freedom for anyone who has an internet connection. So that's I think we're all on the same page with that now. I just that was my big concern with the idea of a constitution.
Well, I think the idea, like you mentioned, is goals is a good one, right? And even Bjangles mentioned as well, like, Tofu kind of had his idea of what, the guidelines should be. And I think so many people already have them, but they're all separated and we've all got our individual ones. And so it's just trying to like coalesce. And yeah, like you said, potentially when those proposals come up where it's like, hey, it kind of conflicts with this guideline or goal or whatever, then, potentially it's like, yeah, you can either try convince people to downvote it, or you can go, hey, I think it's against it, but if we tweak it like this, that might fit it more as well, right? So it's how it can potentially give us a tool to help bring some of these proposals a bit more in line with our end goal as well.
Yeah, and look, I didn't closely follow that Nidhogger proposal, but it does raise a really interesting point. And this is the sort of first I'd heard of that conversation going on. But if Yabba's saying it should be up to the DAO, and Tofu's saying it shouldn't be up to the DAO, how do we square that circle? How do we resolve this? And that's really interesting. I have to give that some thought on how should that look. Because there would even be an argument to say that Brave Tofu's rationalization for why he voted no shouldn't actually be a part of it, right? It helps to understand his motivations, but a no's a no, right? Like yes is yes, no is no. That's all the proposal system should be caring about. So I guess the question is, would he ever vote for, you'd have to ask him, I suppose, would he ever vote for a card change if he was 100% convinced that it was definitely in the best interests of everything, of the game, and whatever guiding principles we decide to adopt, and he can see Yabba's right there saying, I like this proposal, I think it should get up. But if he's got the SPS to say, I don't want these kinds of decisions made by the DAO, yeah, that's fascinating. It's almost like we need to put Tofu and Yabba in a room together and just let them sort it out between themselves. That's good. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting evolution of the DAO. I think a lot of us were largely on the same page in terms of what is our jurisdiction. It's SPS token. Whereas I think all along, and in hindsight, I think it's become more and more clear, Yabba actually wants the DAO to govern everything. And that's not just the SPS token. That's gameplay, that's mechanics, that's abilities, that's contracts, that's you name it, it falls within the DAO's jurisdiction. Like the DAO is king, essentially, in Yabba's mind, and I think we've slowly warmed up to it. I think there's with respect to cards and gameplay and that sort of stuff. I think there are ways. I would love to see a proposal, and this was a big talking point of mine after the Nidhogger thing failed. Was I would actually love to see cards introduced into the game with a like a 1 month testing period. So if there's something that's broken to one polar extreme or the other, then the team has every right to take it back to the drawing board. The market understands that things are subject to change. That was a big reason of pushback from some other voices was I have already made financial decisions based upon the card as it currently stands. In Nidhogger's example, it's not going to be a meta card, therefore I'm going to sell my airdrops. If we change it, I'm out, a certain number of dollars for making that. I mean, part of me says, well, tough shit, but I want a good and fair and balanced meta. That's ultimately what I'm after. So it does open up for a really interesting conversation. I think there are ways to mitigate some of the pains, and if we just, there's a lot of trading card games and digital games that retain the right to balance stuff. We're operating in a little bit of a very new world where our assets are digital, they're on the blockchain. It's it is what it is, and we do have a small history of applying historical changes. Life Leech operating with Blast, for example. Jin Renova, I remember getting a retroactive. I want to say she got a big buff further down the track. Which one?
Satoshi got one.
Satoshi. Yes,
yeah, that was recent.
That was a big one. Yeah.
Well,
I'll go ahead, Keeegs.
With having people doing the testing more, I think, we've kind of almost had that middle ground, whereas, we have some players that are heavily involved in current meta and all the testing. So that kind of hopefully helps reduce the mistakes that get out there. But I know a lot of TCGs, they try not to do erratas and stuff like that if they can. But yeah, some places it makes sense. And that's potentially also, where the Constitution, all those kind of founding documents could help is, what is the priority? Do we want to make sure that gameplay is above some people's financial decisions? For me, we're here for the game. If you made the decision to sell, tough. I'd much rather see the game be better than you missing out on a few $100s because you thought that a card wasn't going to be meta. And even then, the team has since shown that they care about Nidhogger and introduced a whole bunch of cards that work really well with him as well, right? So either way, they made a bad financial decision, but we shouldn't compromise our game because of that, personally.
Interesting to think maybe some of these things can be done with proposals. Say, for example, we post a proposal that says that Splinterlands Incorporated will, from now on, be trusted to make balancing changes to cards when they discern it necessary without resorting to a proposal. Because clearly in this specific case, Yabba wanted the change to Nidhogger. He said, this is great, but he saw himself as constrained by needing for the proposal to get up. And ironically, Brave Tofu was basically saying he should be able to make this choice himself. Yeah. So I think maybe if we just had a vote that said, let's just leave that aspect, let's clear it, carve out that side of things until there's a proposal to change it. Let's carve that out and say the balancing of specific cards, even how frequent a given rule set is. I haven't seen even Stevens or odd ones out in a long time. Are they still in circulation, or?
It's because you're not playing, Matt.
Yeah, that's probably what it is. Just not playing. And maybe they're not coming up in brawls because that's really all I do now is brawls and then challenges on SPL 101. But I think that kind of proposal would be good to say, here's clearly what's within the remit of the DAO. Here's what's up to the game, and up to the Splinterlands. And then if we ever wanted to change that, then we would need to change that by proposal. And I'm sure Yabba would say, okay, we'll take over tweaking cards as necessary until or unless there's another DAO proposal to reverse this. And whether we write that into guiding principles, to say this is where we're at the moment, it could almost be like, rather than guiding principles, just a demarcation of what's decided by the company, what's decided by the DAO.
Well, and it might even be, guiding proposals. If that proposal passes, that then kind of dictates the path that we're taking. We've got an interesting, we're kind of going from that transition from company owns and kind of runs everything to DAO. And so trying to navigate that middle ground is really interesting. And especially, I guess, with the card thing as well, we could give them the full scope, but they can also still, do polling or still engage with the community to see how do they feel, they could do like, do we want to change it or not? Yes or no? And you could also go, hey, here's a couple of versions that we're thinking about, you know, depending on how much you want to engage with the community. I'm a big fan of community engagement, if you can't tell. Some people less so. But yeah, I think there's real benefit to it. We have some great minds in our community, and yeah, if we can just like tap into them sometimes a bit more, I think it'd be great.
Something that I would love to see, and I think you've mentioned this in some form or fashion over, your conversations, Keeegs, is I don't know if a DAO proposal is always the best measure. Like you just called out, say the team does take Nidhogger back to the drawing board, and we've got a few different options. One is looking at the debilitation force reduction. In my mind, that's the biggest hindrance of that card becoming meta. The other one is a reduction in mana cost and one or two other adjustments. I don't think we should see a proposal for each of these card iterations and which one wins by the greatest majority. Some of these measures I think are more appropriate for something like a poll. So I think there's UX could go a long way in helping to relieve these sorts of, I think, unnecessary pains. Maybe it's something as simple as introducing SPS polls as part of Splinterlands.com, whereas right now all of that stuff lives on Peak, which, back to many conversations we've had, a lot of folks don't even realize that they have a Hive account as a result of signing up for Splinterlands. Is that onus on Splinterlands? Is that onus on Hive? Is that onus on us, the community? Honestly, I think all of those things are irrelevant. Ultimately, you came here for Splinterlands. We should have that poll on Splinterlands.
Yeah, and another thing that we could do as well in terms of just like card alterations, they could have the poll out, and they could also just have the couple different variations on Mavs or something that, people can test them and try and go, actually, I'm really loving playing with this. Give them a chance to give it a more informed feedback. And like, people love that being involved, right? I think is a big thing. And so if people feel like they can be involved and actually have input, I think we'll get a way more engaged community. They feel like they can actually change things here, which, yeah, I think I've seen it in action. I've seen how like powerful community empowerment and stuff can be. And yeah, we have some amazing people. If we can just put them in the right place or get them to have the right conversation, I think we've got a lot of amazing things possibly happening in our future.
Yeah, for sure. That cuts both ways too. I've seen people put up proposals that make a lot of sense. That proposal gets shot down, and the guy just, this community is not worth my time anymore. I can't trust the wisdom of the crowd here, so I'm gonna sell up and leave. And I saw that specifically with Holozor, who's a close personal friend. He's still around on Hive and still got a lot of affection for the game, but he's essentially said, you know what, I'm not. And then a year later, that exact proposal happened anyway, and we ended up staking our HBD, and we ended up, the DAO did that anyway. So I think it's great to have power to the people, but I think people, in a way, also want that power constrained. I would hate to think that Yabba's got a vision for how the game's going to look 5 years from now, but that every step of the way he's hamstrung by knowledge that if it's not immediately apparent why this specific thing he's doing today is going to benefit the game down the road, that it's just going to get killed by a proposal from people who don't share that vision because they can't, right? He's got ideas for the future. So I think it goes in, I think the proposal system is, it's like fire, right? Like it's a great servant, but a fearful master. And we need to be very, very cautious that, I don't want to get in the way of the geniuses who built this game. And I don't want there to be stumbling blocks that they need to account for on the way to building their vision. So they're the ones day to day on the front lines thinking these things through. I got this mental image of Yabba sitting there with Dave. They've got the stats. They're looking at who's arriving, how long they're staying. They've got all of this corporate stuff. They're holding board meetings, and then and here's exactly where we want to be 3 years from now. We need to take step A. It's not of immediate apparent benefit, but it's going to set us up for B and then C, and then we win. And then oh, but hang on, we need to, without sharing any of this information, we need to get the approval of guys who maybe threw some money at the game but aren't watching it closely. Or maybe they've been playing for a long time and they're watching it closely, but they don't understand necessarily the sums and figures that we're looking at. So I think, like anything, it's a balancing act, and we're feeling our way through it. But I want Yabba to know that, okay, you need to get stuff pass through, this stuff you need to get through. This stuff is within the remit of the game. But also, I want the community to rally around. And if Yabba says, here's the direction I want to go, then that, I think, hey, let's trust the guy, right? He built the game. He's looking at the stats. So, okay, whether it's a proposal or not, let's just back him. Let's back his plays. So that's my, if Yabba's said to me, hey, your pants are on fire, I'm not going to just look down. I'm just going to run straight to a fire extinguisher, right? I don't need independent confirmation. That guy knows what he's talking about, and I trust him. So, that's my take on it too. I don't want this well-meaning idea to get in the way of that vision.
Yeah, I think the team has also like widened its feedback circle as well, I think, which has helped a lot over the last few years. They've, especially Dave, he's out in the trenches talking to so many people. Like, I don't know when or if or how that guy sleeps, but he's always somewhere doing something Splinterlands, that's for sure. I get him at all sorts of obscure hours.
Passionate.
Passion, yeah. It drives you. And I guess that kind of leads nicely into something else I've been talking about lately is those ongoing contracts. For me, I feel if we can get one of those set up for like the core set development, then that really gives the team that scope to focus on building. They don't have to worry about a proposal. Is it going to pass or not? What kind of adjustments do we need to make? If they know that, hey, this funding's coming through, they want, the community wants it at this kind of cadence or whatever, this is exactly what they want, makes it easy for them. And so I'm hoping, that kind of stuff can free them up so they actually can plan further out, and they don't have to spend time, doing all these proposals when it's the same kind of thing. Typically, it's the same kind of format, but it takes a lot of time. There's a lot of conversations that have to happen. There's a whole process. There's friction. So the idea for me behind having those long-term contracts as well is less time or less opportunities for friction when it's just in place and it just ticks away. So I guess, let's get into it. Ongoing contract for set development. What do you think? Have you had a chance to listen in to the chat I had with Dave?
I did, yeah. I gave it a listen. It was, really interesting. And not a lot that I could throw in there to say this is, something I have a problem with. I would say it touches on the broader discussion that's just sort of been had over the last day or so regarding the DAO holding DEC. Which I think is an interesting thing that we could maybe explore too. But look, I see no other contenders for building card sets. It's not like there's three different corporations that are all vying for the chance to issue these cards and to run the servers and the like. So I sort of feel like if this is the way that Splinterlands would prefer to go about things, they're the ones who have legal, regulatory, taxation structures, all that type of thing to worry about. The DAO is effectively without an owner. It's just an internet club spread out all over the world. So if they prefer, if Yabba and Dave for their reasons prefer it that way, then I'm totally okay with that and on board with that. And I think in a way that it's a potential jackpot for the DAO, because if we get that right and we promote it right and the sales are coming through to us, the pack sales come through to the DAO, then that's brilliant. So, but again, I think the DAO holding DEC is interesting. My personal preference would be to say, the DAO should maybe only hold the kind of DEC that's required to fund liquidity pools and that type of thing, rather than sitting on a stockpile of what should be a product-based stablecoin. It seems like there's a level of safety and security there in having DEC in the DAO. But if that undermines the stability of DEC, because people are not quite sure what the DAO is going to do with it, then especially from an optics perspective, that's a big one, right? It's all about the optics.
Yeah, I guess there's that. But like more, I guess personally, I see it, we're more likely to see a flood of DEC from the community than the DAO. So yes, that is a concern, but I think it's so small. And I guess depending on how big of a holder you are, depends on how much it should really really matter. And if you're a big holder, then it's probably in your best interest to not. It's kind of one of those things that's like almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy because of how it's set up. But for me, I like to have a stash there for, I think that we need more liquidity in DEC, but I don't think we should put it in there until it's at peg. We need to add a whole lot of liquidity at peg to help keep it there, because it's great that we pay the company in DEC, but if the community can't keep it at peg, we're essentially undercutting the company every single time. And so I think that's something that, we talk about it a lot, is like, people don't necessarily understand all these things. And so I think education is something that we have to, as a company, as a DAO, as a community, get better at, is like explaining how do these things work. Because at the moment, the company is giving it's like under 60 cents at the moment for DEC.
Yeah, it's like 55, 56, I think.
So they're getting like a massive discount on what we're essentially paying them. So I think personally, I'd love to see a lot more done to try help get DEC to peg and support it there. But that's such a complicated topic.
It really is, yeah. Yeah, for sure. And especially with the flywheel, there's different ways that SPS turns into DEC. I sort of instinctively feel like the DAO sitting on a big stash of DEC is then it's then the DAO, especially if we're saying for the next 2 or 3 years or however long, the long-term contracts for Splinterlands, that we're going to pay in a mixture of DEC and stable coins. That's guaranteed DEC sell pressure for 2 or 3 years. And I think that might undermine that whole, hang on to this and it's probably going to hold peg, mentality or messaging. So yeah, I don't know. I'd have to look better at the tokenomics, but I really feel, and look, I'd like to hear arguments from both sides, right? The guys who say burn all the DEC in the DAO, right? That might be an extreme position and just pay the team in stables. But I get the appeal of that, right? But then also the other one, which is, no, we should not. Sorry? How do we end the stables? Yeah, well, I guess people buying card packs with them, right? Like that's
kind of what DEC is, right? That's the whole point. That's the whole purpose of it, is to basically be our own stable coin. But, the outside ones have the support, right? They've got the liquidity and the mechanisms in place to keep it at peg, but just we haven't been able to do that. And I think part of that is because we have maybe 1 to 2 times a year where all the demand is, and then there's nothing, and people make use of that to go, well, shit, it's up. Now's the perfect time for me to cash out my SPS. They create a whole bunch more DEC, and then it just slowly floods down again until we have the next push up in demand. Yeah. And then it also didn't help with the mini set, because as soon as they announced the mini set, you saw the, SPS shoot up and DEC go down. So kind of the opposite. I think, I don't like the idea of changing, just kind of sending them back up and down. It's like, we just need to focus. But yeah, I need my whiteboard and my little pins and my Charlie suit on at the moment. But yeah,
don't you guys think that the ongoing contracts would, I think there's something to be said for DEC fluctuating so far from peg, and it's not, we've heard from Matt, we've heard from Dave, we've heard from some of the brilliant minds in our ecosystem that it's not the end of the world. They're confident that we will get there. We've got for better or worse, we have a very fickle FOMO community. And you as a group, we tend to, strike when the iron's hot and go after what is the next biggest thing. And we wait until the waning hours to make those moves. Whereas I think ongoing contracts, one of the big pieces that, I know Keeegs is at the forefront of your mind with ongoing contracts is a schedule. If we knew that we had core set 7 coming December 2026, we have mini set, 7A coming summer 2026, I think that would go a long way to, maybe it wouldn't be the catch-all to solving our issues of maintaining peg, but there's certainty and security both for the community knowing that these products are being developed, and I think the value of the team having that ongoing financial security can't be understated. Like that is a massive, massive thing for me. Right now they're operating, pretty much paycheck to paycheck. Whereas if we're saying, hey, we're going to keep you on retainer for, X million dollars in DEC for the next 18 months and see how this ongoing contract goes. If like we were talking about earlier, until it gets removed by another proposal, this will be the status quo moving forward. Every 18 months, we're going to, piecemeal in, 5%, 8%, whatever that number looks like over the course of that 18 months to fund development of the next core set, the next mini set, tournament revamp, reward cards, legendary summoners. I think we've done ourselves a bit of a disservice. We got a sweetheart deal with Rebellion. I think it was the right call at the right time. The team, Matt, very gracefully gifted the DAO a huge percentage of Rebellion. In hindsight, I think it probably hamstrung the team's revenue a little bit. Like we got a 50% come into the DAO. And a very small sum that we paid for the development of that set. Unfortunately, it kind of set the tone for what the DAO should expect. So I think it's going to be a little bit of a painful conversation and a little bit of a come to Jesus moment for the DAO to realize, the team has some very expensive expenses to keep the lights on and to keep this thing chugging along. But now I think is better than ever when you look at the calendar year of 2025 and the absolute mass volume of stuff that the team has churned out. This is the new status quo. This is the new pace of development. This is what we will, everybody expects that this is we're going to keep this momentum moving into 2026. Why would we not want to fund that, in an ongoing capacity now that we have established this new cadence of delivery of moving code and product into production? So I think there's the DEC conversation is a really weird one. If we have that ongoing demand, all of a sudden it's not such a bad deal. Like, yes, I've heard a lot of folks say, shout out to Ultrasound that, he would love to see that DEC just vanish. It would pull a whole bunch of liquidity off the market. It would move a lot of that DEC out of circulation, I guess is a better way to sum it up. But yeah, it's a really interesting conversation. I love the concept of ongoing contracts. I think it solves a lot of things. I think it gives the team the room to breathe that the team needs and benefits from. I think we drill down into the micro a little bit too much with a lot of these products for hire contracts. I don't think, I think I want the team to be able to flex their creativity. I think giving that general, hey, we're going to push all our coins into, all of our funds into keeping the lights on in perpetuity based off of XYZ criteria. I think it's a win-win. I really hope that we get this thing to fruition and look forward to the conversations along the way.
So one thing you mentioned is like the kind of DAO, the team kind of got hamstrung because of how much they gave the DAO. So, I almost see this as like similar to the pack issue. Is like we're trying to move everything kind of to be DAO centric. The whole idea of the team giving packs to the DAO was so that the DAO could do what the team used to do, as use some incentives to give out to different places. To me, I see the same with the DEC. So typically before that, the company would not charge anything. They'd build a set and they take all of that DEC and then they use that to help development. It would often go out via credits, but they use all of that. So now what the model is we're going to split that. So some of the team gets that. They use that to help continue to develop. But the idea was that still this other half is still meant to be used to help develop Splinterlands and the ecosystem. But we've got to the mindset where we're like, actually, we're not going to spend any of that. But actually, that's against kind of how we were set up. It was just to give us more power to choose how we spend that. We could use that to hire the company to do more development. We could hire other people to do development. But the intention for that was to use it, is to how can we help build and develop the ecosystem, we could be using some of that to buy back SPS to help support the SPS price. But the intention was for us to be using it. But yeah, it's a very difficult thing to use with our community. But it's like, again, trying to get the education out. That was part of why I was trying to get Matt on, was to, Matt, was to kind of remind people that actually this is kind of how it was set up. Was
I think we lost Keeegs.
Yep, we lost Keeegs.
While he's gone, just changing the topic, slightly, I do want to call out...
That DC is coming for us to spend.
Yeah, we lost you
for a second
Keeegs. We lost the tail end of it, but I got the thrust of what you were saying, and yeah, look, I do agree. We're spending the DEC either way. Whether it was the business taking the DEC, directly for pack sales and then selling it themselves, or whether we're filtering all that through the DAO. So one thing I would like to call out is that Bitcoin has absolutely shat the bed. 125 grand down to 85. US, that's a $30,000 drop in the value of a single Bitcoin, which is just insane. They were when I moved out of Bitcoin, they were between 5 and 7 grand US back in the day. I held them for a long time, and I sold them. In hindsight, you make the best decision you can at the time, but between 5 and 7, I think. Sorry,
it was still probably a good deal at the time.
It was, yeah, and it was for $1 Hive though, so yeah, you make your calls. But I think the take home message from all this though is I think if Bitcoin has dropped so much that it's basically a single coin has dropped as much value as what 5 or 6 coins were worth when I sold, $30,000 is a huge drop for Bitcoin. It was very recently that it was worth 35, 37. It stayed around there for a long time. And so I think the fact that, SPS was struggling. It's been under a cent for a while, and it was, hovering around that 007. And now it's sort of 0.065 or something like that. I'm thinking that's actually, considering how big a dump Bitcoin made, and, we, like anything, Bitcoin sneezes and the rest of the old school catch a cold. I think we're weathering a storm really, really well. I'm on crypto Twitter all the time, and I'm seeing guys, leveraged longs just getting absolutely destroyed. Very few people would have predicted we'd be down under 90. This at any point really. And so I kind of feel like if you'd have told me, 6 months ago, Bitcoin's going to hit 125, slowly creep up to there, and then drop down to 85, but SPS will still be above 0.006. I don't know, man. I'd be pretty impressed with that. I really feel like we're weathering that storm and decoupling in a way, right? We're becoming our own ecosystem, where people just sort of look over there, and rather than there's a tidal wave that's swamping us, it's like those guys are really struggling over there. All right, back to it. What does my next guild brawl look like? So that's just something I want to call out. I think that's a testament to the strength of the community there. There's not a whole lot of people dumping their assets to go and buy $85,000 Bitcoin because, hey, it's just going to pop back up again or whatever. I'm not getting that vibe of panic. It just really feels like a decoupling.
That's a really hot take there, Matt. That basically, if you bought and held SPS, you'd be outperforming Bitcoin. There's not many tokens that can say that. I do agree though. I think for a while we've kind of shown that we're decoupled from the market. Like I remember, I think it was maybe After Sound, and probably a year or two ago, I can't even remember what it was, but there was a stage where the market was going down and we were going up. I think we've just got such a hardcore base that we've shown that like our products, when we put them out, there is demand for it. And so I just like to figure out how can we spread that out a little bit more, instead of just over a couple of months.
Well, don't you think, and I'm glad you brought that up, Matt, because I think it is worth, kind of marinating on for a little bit. We've seen a lot of the way that, and I'm going to shout out Aftersound and Lorcas and Tails for their conversation last week around glint. We were sitting on a glut of glints, and pretty much overnight, the team was able to put out products that sucked up. I think Matt said, more than we're in 10-figure glint consumption, which is just absolutely insane. I have to assume that that's a huge percentage of of the total glint that was out there. It's impressive to see that very quickly the team was able to. Yeah, I think part of the problem with SPS for a really long time was that was the only thing of value that players could earn and then turn around and sell. Now we have skins and gold foil reward cards and regular foil reward cards that you can unlock with scrolls, and we've got land items that you can turn around and sell, and you've got, you name it. And I, if we were to ask Dave, I think we would get an hour monologue on all the non-SPS shit that he's planning to cook up and bring to the ecosystem. And I think folks are, SPS staying relatively stable versus the rest of the market is testament to the community saying, "Hey, we're here for it." It's not just the core set and the mini set stuff. It's everything else that the game is doing. And we've got, I think Dave has been pretty public in saying that the Avatar project is one that he's super excited about. Matt has been talking about it for months as one that he is super keen to get out. And for all intents and purposes, we're getting that, before the end of the year, as far as I know, which is yet just another non-SPS related item that you have to pursue with, guess what? Getting more SPS. Getting more SPS is going to, set you up in a position to, capitalize on these things. And it's been really interesting to watch. I think we have kind of built ourselves a sweet little silo of Splinterlands here, and it feels more like a game than it ever has before. And as we're watching the Crypto Gaming Recovery Fund continue to reach out to more and more communities, more and more Web3 guys that put the crypto at the forefront of their product, they're falling flat and they're failing. Hey, we're putting game first. Token is very much a big part of that puzzle, but awesome, compelling, engaging gameplay is our bread and butter. Come check us out. I'm really primed for the future, man. I think Splinterlands has never been in this position. I'm on record probably sounding like an absolute idiot with egg on my face, saying I've never been more excited. But I continue to say that, and it's with, I think, for every good reason. I think we're doing a lot of the right things, and I think what you just called out is absolute testament to a lot of the folks in the community agreeing with that.
Well, and like you said, it's not just glint as well. You've seen the market, well, I've seen the market shift on like all those Chaos Legion cards. They're doing that with Cinder. We can't even spend it yet. And this is just the start of your use of Cinder. I'm really hoping that, our good community, they've got that short-term memory. So I'm really hoping that once the land cards are done, that the prices drop down a bit, because I want to stock up. I want to stock up cheaper, because if this goes well, and now that we have it in place, we're going to see Cinder used a lot more. So they're really, they're getting there. They're really working towards where they said they want to be. Chaos Legion supply is shrinking. Yes, it's into land, not necessarily how we thought it would end up in land. But yeah, I guess it's like, I was thinking earlier, I can't remember, somebody mentioned something, but as patience is the perfect tool for transferring wealth from the or time. Time is the perfect tool for transferring wealth from the impatient to the patient. That's kind of what we have here. Like you said before, our community is so like, what's next? What's in front of us? Whereas, and I think having those long-term contracts, they'll know. So they've always got that something to be buying for. But, if you're ahead of the game.
Oh, we lost you again, Keeegs. I keep going back to 30 cent DEC is what bought me my second region. I had enough to buy one region, and then the price of DEC kept dropping and dropping. And hang on, 30 cents. I can buy enough here to 15 million DEC or something. I can buy enough here for a second region. Let's just do that. And without that, I would just be MattClarke, I guess. But it's not. Look, it's not just that. It's like, if you look at the airdrops, the way the airdrops work. I remember when gold foils were invented, right? Cards were just cards, and then they invented, we're going to do gold foils. We're going to drop them to the people who bought the packs. not actually the people who open the packs or the people who currently have the cards right now. And so no, hang on, I think it was the cards that were, well, you have to forgive me, it was 7 years ago, but it wasn't the current holder of that card. It was the person who originally had the card or something along those lines. And so we had all these pack flippers who were just buying packs to strip them and just sell, just opening them and selling the, hunting for legendaries, which is part of the reason that I was able to corner a specific common alpha card quite cheap, thousands per cent, back in the day. But
which card was that, Matt? I don't know if we've heard that story.
Rumors about the tattoos are just rumors. Forget about it. Let's move on. But we learned from that, right? We said, okay, this is not the intended outcome. We probably should have, Aggie and Yabba said, look, that wasn't, we didn't think that through, and now we're doing the gold airdrops. So from now on, they'll be going to whatever who. And so there was that, and then it was about the airdrops with, say, going back to Dr. Blight, and how do those airdrops look? And okay, now you need vouchers, and then that was refined further still to now the wagons, right? With the wagons, the wagon repair kits, and all of that. And I think it takes 7 years to trial these things and learn all these lessons, because nobody's done this before. No one's built a TCG on blockchain at all. Trying to mesh the economics and the gameplay, it is incredibly ambitious. And I don't think people realize just how much thought has gone into every aspect of the way the game is right now, because it's all based on what's been trialed, and then we trialed this, and then we give this a shot, and we learned from our lessons. And literally, Yabba is just sitting there 7 years as a machine, just learning every single lesson from every single time. And so not only is it like, okay, this project's been around for 7 years, it's probably not a Ponzi scheme, right? Because they just collapse. They're all about the FOMO, and then they collapse. Well, 7 years, that's not us. But also the lessons learned over those 7 years. You can't buy it. Right, you can't. Bill Gates can't say, "I'm gonna build my own game, and I'm just gonna buy myself 7 years worth of experience." You can't do it, right? So yeah, I just when you're talking about short-term memory, and guys are like flitting from one thing to the next, but there are those core guys who learn every lesson thoroughly. They say, "Here's what we wanted to do. Here's what actually happened. Here's where we went wrong. Here's how we're going to change it." And every single time, it gets better.
Yeah, I wonder what Matt's price would be to go and work for Bill Gates on his game. But like, they're still learning as well. I was talking to Dave recently, and they're already looking at how they're going to refine the conflicts again. They'll do some more testing with the mini set, and then potentially we might even learn some more, and it might be improved upon again for the next main set. I think and not every single time you test and try something, it's going to be perfect or a better upgrade than before. But, you learn that. And now, okay, how do we have to tweak it to go forward? So, yeah, definitely very curious to see what the final product is for the next airdrop. But, yeah, I think, it's come such a long way from where it was based on pack sales. I think the fact that you have to hold and lock the cards up, that's such a better way to distribute those airdrops. So, yeah, we're just going from strength to strength, I think.
Yeah. The iterative process has really taken a life of its own. And it's one of our strengths.
Yeah. And I guess so many people think that, once something happened, that's how it's always going to be, but we just proved that all it takes is a proposal, or not even a proposal, to change things, And especially for how in touch Dave is with the community. That's happening more and more. I feel we kind of lost that a little bit without the regular town halls, but now at least we've got Dave out in the trenches chatting to everybody. It goes a long way for sure. All right. Well, I know that Mr. Clarke has got some other engagements soon. So any final thoughts from either of you before we wrap this up?
Well, it's funny because a business meeting, you're sitting there on Microsoft Teams just nodding and smiling, and you just, a minute takes an hour. And yet chatting to, actual genuine good mates who are passionate about the same project, an hour takes a minute. That's the crux of it. So yes, Unfortunately, life does intrude at times, and I've got things to do. It's a busy time of year, and kids and nephews and nieces and the like. But it's always great fun to chat with you guys, and I'm always open to discussing anything and being completely wrong. Like, absolutely, just throw it up there. And I just want to basically serve this community. And when you're trusted, I've found if you trust a good person, they rise to that level, right? And so when the community said, and I started hearing rumors and people tapped me on the shoulder and say, hey, you should nominate yourself as chairman. I'm like, me chairman of the DAO? What are you talking about? But the more people were coming at me and saying, hey, Matt, you should do this thing, the more I thought, wow, if they're going to trust me with that. So now I'm like, every day I'm like, how can I do this well? Right? What aspect of my mannerisms and the way I operate can best represent the DAO? That's because I want to be up to that. I want to be up to the. I want to vindicate people's decision to trust me with that responsibility. So, look, my DMs are open. If you have any ideas about how I can do a better job as DAO chair, please let me know. I promise, no matter how silly and outrageous it is, I won't be offended or upset. I will just appreciate you feeding it through to me in good faith. So, yeah.
Well, I'm going to put your DMs on public air. You'd be a much better chair if you played battles, Matt. No, I mean, all seriousness, man. And I've shared this with you before. You continue to amaze and completely justify, my backing of you as the DAO chair. You're humble, you're open, you're transparent, you're an absolute badass for, wanting to rise to the occasion, and your commitment to doing justice to the community, to the position, to the company. Awesome. I couldn't imagine anybody else doing it.
I appreciate it, mate. And likewise, Keeegs, you've got a lot of experience in this realm, I guess, in the competitive online gaming, and you're the same, right? You're just saying, hey, look, I'm passionate about this. Here's what I think. And when you say here's what I think, these aren't feelings that you're having, right? You're not, some people say, oh, I think this, and they're just feeling stuff. They're not actually thinking. But when I know that you're thinking, right? You say, I think, and I'm like, well, there's a lot of thought behind this, right? Because Keeegs, A, has experience, but also B, has passion, and C, has intellect. And that's what we need, is that confluence where, you talk, I'm listening, because you care a lot. And in a lot of ways, there's no glass ceiling here, right? Anybody who arrives can and cares and understands can absolutely get an audience, right? Again, Splinterlands 101, come on the show. I'm sure you're in the same sort of position there, Keeegs. If somebody wants to come on here and share their thoughts, absolutely. This is a real meritocracy right now, right? Maybe years down the track when everybody's locked in and everything's, and that'll be very hard for somebody to come along and establish a presence and who knows. But
hopefully not.
Hopefully not. But right now, we got to keep remembering. Don't pull the ladder up after you. But for here and now, this is the time. This is when names get made, and I'd encourage anybody to step up to the plate and join the conversation.
Yeah, I was lucky. So much of my experience was around these kind of consensual democracies, and so many of them were based on the decentralized model. So it kind of like fits perfectly. And yeah, exactly, kind of your mindset and exactly what Bjangles was saying. That's why I want to get people like yourself on here to hear your thoughts, because I know that you've kind of got the DAO's best interest at heart, and that's kind of how we should be making decisions. It's like, okay, yeah, a lot of people make decisions based on what's best for me, but really we need to be thinking what's best for the DAO. Not every time there's going to be what's best for me, but long term, if we make choices that's what's best for the DAO, the minor things we lose out is going to be so irrelevant. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, guys. This has been Under the Hood. Like Matt said, we're welcome to anybody that wants to come hang out, chat, talk proposals. Hopefully next week the plan is to do a live one where we probably talk about the tournament posts that I've put out and many others that are put out. So if you're passionate about tournaments or want to come talk, share ideas, get in touch. And then I imagine we'll also try to sneak in some of these ongoing contract discussions as well. Because, I want more of those kind of calls as well, where we've got the community, we can answer questions, we can go into details. So you've been listening to Under the Hood. Thanks, everybody. Catch you guys next time.
Kingdom sleep with the satchels full of ancient the flame.